everyone, welcome to another video, and today is another episode, and actually the final episode of the alternate future of the world, Endsieg. The last and final episode. And it's all this stuff is finally coming to an end. Episode 7, The 1,000-Year Reich. As the perpetual bombings begin, Germany makes a decision, and they decide to blitz through and occupy Paris. Meanwhile, England falls under occupation, and Ukraine tries to re-establish control in Crimea. Though it's barely even functional now. So, they finally make a campaign up into Italy. The powers manage to advance and surround the Italian desert and start slowly making their way up, hoping to link up with Rome. As all this has happened, Portugal has been restored to its glory, and at this point Madrid, and by that half of Spain, has been captured by the democratic allegiance. What makes things even worse now is China gets involved, and they already had their troops fully on this border, but now they're committing. And it is a total bloodbath. The Chinese wave and onslaught can't really be stopped. There's just so many troops now everywhere, and as they come into Siberia and walk the dangerous territories of Siberia to come right around to this front, cutting off a bunch of troops. They managed to come here, make a break through right here. All this land grabs so fast just because there were so many people. And soon this entire area surrenders. Romania starts being obliterated. Really bad. Crimea gets invaded, and Germany starts to occupy other places in Poland now, and fully goes on the assault. Assaulting Ukraine from all sides. Kiev is threatened, and basically all major Ukrainian coast that was already non-existent to begin with is now completely inaccessible. And as the dam has been released, we can already see some places like Malta, the areas of Greece, and even the Corsica and Sardinia start to dry up. They make their headway, but Germany is eager to win this war. They completely blitz through and decide a major push right at Slovenia. They push down fast and reach the radioactive zone, and with that they start crushing all the troops around until they completely encircle them and cut them off from any escape, forcing the army to surrender. With this, they also go on the offensive and start taking back their Dutch territory. However, the Dutch hold out, especially around this small lake area. Now is the time. The green team will be no more. As yellow makes one more strike, they push up to try and capture Kiev first, but Germany gets to it. The Kievan government falls, and Ukraine fully surrenders to Germany. Meanwhile, Romania surrenders, but there are now Transylvanian Legion fighters that start their own odd campaign. They completely desert all of this area and start invading literally everywhere else to try and gain back their support. They start going into completely rural areas that haven't been yet tamed after the nation's collapse. Hungary manages to repel their once assault and even makes headway in their attack right here. However, Transylvania is quickly captured by we'll just say the Allies for right now. With this, Germany decides that in order to end this war, they need to pull out every last trick. They immediately bomb Damascus and Baghdad, and they start bombing even more major cities. They strike Athens, completely polluting the entire water around it. The Slavs of Serbia, though, get it way worse, as they are completely nuked all around, and it's far to say that basically Serbia is almost being erased off the map, as some of the radiation even leaks into Bulgaria, and the Serbian government collapses. So the Allies send peacekeeping forces back into Serbia to restabilize their control. And though with all this control now gone, Hungary makes their advances right in and manages to cut off the Allies, quickly capturing their entire front, crushing their encirclement, and completely leaving this completely undefended. But thankfully the Allies managed to retreat successfully out of there, and they continue the fight. But it's not looking good as they start traversing through the territory and start hitting everywhere. Here. So they decide to do the same thing. They push really hard over here, which doesn't make much of a dent, but surprise attack from right here is in, and they manage to circle almost a third of the entire Hungarian army, completely and totally annihilating them. This leaves them to go on a campaign to restabilize at least most of Serbia or Yugoslavia, and they managed to completely wipe their front and even managed to invade into Slovenia a bit. Germany's kind of peeved at all this, and just now they've finally split France. And even so, after all this, as they finally have met up in Italy. It's a full stalemate now. Nothing is moving in the front until finally something does happen in Africa. Revolts in all nations occur. These nations don't even want to be under Nazi occupation, so they all revolt. And within 15 weeks, the entire Middle Africa governments collapse, but manage to completely unify their area. This leaves the last remaining militia fighters completely defenseless, the ones still loyal to the regime. As everyone approaches them from all sides, there's not much they can do. They try to go back around this way to see if they can link up with Germany. He's trying to go all the way around here, but it's a suicide mission, as clearly they cannot even go through the Suez Canal, and it would take months and months to even manage to make it here. And shortly after, an Indian cruiser bombs the boat, destroying what was left of the German African army. Two continents down, one continent left, Germany. They just keep pushing, the Allies just keep pushing and they don't stop pushing, and basically it's clear that their victory is almost inevitable. They just have more manpower. With the combined power of China, India, and the United States, there's not really much they can even do. Their population barely even stands on the scale. So, they plan to play dirty. Even more dirty. The first thermonuclear weapon used by Germany is now sent. And it's a stealth bomber. The first stealth bomber used in warfare. And it strikes right at New York. The explosion is huge and completely disrupts all of New York. Completely sending the United States into shock. They were just nuked. How could they have not seen any of it coming? And then Belfast disappears. Its other key cities in Scotland and Wales are all nuked, as well as in Ireland. This alone completely shuts down all of the British Isles, and it's now in a state of total anarchy. German forces attempt to enter the London area, but are somehow kicked out by anarchists and the local population. They attempt a full-scale assault here, but eventually they fail. Unfortunately for the Netherlands, this means death, as in Netherlandian genocide, as a Dutch genocide begins. The United States has pretty much only landed in a few places in Greenland, and it just completely collapses, as well as Iceland, since they were never really important parts of the Reich to begin with. And yet, the Chinese are going to approach even more now. With massive gains, they managed to meet up with the Caucasus Front and span one big mighty front against the Reichskommissariat Moscowian. And that's when this happens. special intelligence from all over the Scandinavia starts, and they begin a revolt. Even a revolt in the Reich's own back door, or of Denmark. They've been planning this for years. Within only a few weeks, complete solidarity over Scandinavia begins, as the Scandinavian people will say do or die. Basically proclaiming if you are not for this Scandinavian free government, then you are against, and any against shall be killed with no mercy. So most of the population completely joins and unifies. And then they write their own, and meanwhile in Oslo, they start writing their constitution while Stockholm is the key center for battle plans. And soon, all countries are reinstated. But that's not the end. Just like that, the Kalmar Union has been restored, now called the Nordic Empire. Here, Germany is about ready to commit nuclear war crimes. The Finnish militias immediately take back St. Petersburg and immediately liberate Tallinn. And then that's when it hits. Freedom. In each of these areas of occupation, freedom zones have popped up. And they've been waiting a long time for it. As the states come to be, one thing is certain, that the Reich's downfall is of course inevitable. So, how do they stop this massacre? By doing something completely unprecedented. They plan to make a wall of radiation. They completely and devastatingly nuke everything in their border and everything outside their border. Are completely destroying millions. And they even nuke Hungary, even though Hungary was completely and totally against this outlandish idea. Hungary is offered something. If they switch sides now, they would be allowed to keep the land that they've gained in exchange for fighting against Germany. For a while, the Allies don't hear back from them. But then suddenly, the troops notice the Hungarian army is retreating. Like, completely retreating. They've retreated out of all of their zones of occupation. And then a telegram is sent to the United States saying borders are open. Hungary officially switches sides. And knowing full well, even the Hungarian army, knowing that the wall of radiation stands before them, they charge it, risking radiation poisoning, all to open up a scary front for the Germans. With this biggest break, everything collapses. Everything starts being liberated all at once. But soon, zones of absolute anarchy start popping up, and soon, France is in a state of total anarchy, which starts somehow clashing with everyone around them. Even they clash against Germany in anarchist regions. Venice, unfortunately, falls to this, and complete anarchy surrounds the entire area now. anarchist legions in Crimea also show up as Reich Commissary in Ukraine, Belarus, and Baltica all surrender. Poland, having a lot of their freedom now, continues to fight back harshly. And they do until they meet the radiation border. Soon, zones of complete and total anarchy start appearing all over the world, especially in places with radiation. The Spanish Anarchist Legion, as they call themselves, would soon split the Allies off from the rest of France, and they would have to continue and try and supply France with a very awkward fighting position. Even rebels in Madrid had appeared and united up with anarchists. Europe is at the moment a complete and total mess of nuclear fire. Though Ireland does manage to reunify itself once again. These anarchist regions are practically everywhere. And they were intended by the Reich to cause mischief and chaos. Tunis is nuked, along with a few other coastal places, as well as Benghazi, which completely shut down all of Libya. Finally, in the coming few days, Reichskommissariat Moscowian soon is completely surrounded, hopelessly outmatched in a fight that they could not even bear to try and win. They are slowly encircled, and soon the Allies, Chinese, and of all ethnicities, enter Moscow. Moscow is finally declared safe, and Reichskommissariat Moskowen surrenders. It's just Germany now. Germany immediately makes their final pushback.
Using some new hazmat suits, they managed to push decently into Hungary, and they pushed back into Poland. Though, because of the radiation border, most of their troops started dying in the middle of their conquering sessions, turning some places into total anarchy states. Confused on who ruled what and what ruled when, soon Königsberg completely turns anarchist. And the love spreads as Denmark completely captures Schleswig and Holstein. Hitler is soon assassinated, and no one knows who did it. But the name sounds familiar. His name is Hermann Göring. And just before Hitler died, though, he nuked all of Denmark and complete lowered Sweden and Norway, killing off a lot of the population of which they had left, turning the entire south of Scandinavia and Denmark into anarchist regions. Finally, the German government basically says aloud, if they can't have Germany, no one will have Germany. And so they start nuking. They start nuking the Netherlands completely, as if their genocide earlier wasn't enough. They start nuking important places. And they nuke the complete outer edge of Berlin. And nuking a lot of ports, including Hamburg, which completely falls into nuclear disarray. As you could expect, anarchist regions pop up. Soon, they decide that the best way to approach this is just from the east. Though, the German government makes it clear that the world cannot coexist anymore. They nuke Slovenia and the north. They nuke San Marino, the oldest country. They continue to use the remainder of their nukes to nuke everywhere possible. Nuking Bratislava and a lot of Hungary. Immediately the Transylvanian fighters completely join the anarchist league. Anarchism. And completely start an invasion into Hungary. They nuke everything in Belarus and every major capital and area in the Balkans. Is completely shutting down on these places. St. Petersburg, this was considered a crime against humanity, and even more so, was completely nuked to ash. Soon there was suddenly this complete and total no-go zone around all of Eastern Europe. Basically, don't go in, no one goes in, and anyone who comes out is considered an enemy, and to shoot them on sight. Though they have been sending flyers to specific areas where they're willing to take people in like at the Finnish-Strait border. Here, and they have a checkpoint right here by. These are zones of complete and total control that they solidify around this area. Oh, missed a spot. Regardless, Germany, filled with distraught, completely collapses. But with that, everything that they held around them soon collapses. And even nations collapse. Hungary collapses. As Poland collapses, and many more states give up. The Italian peninsula is dark and silent, as well as many other places. Soon, the anarchists completely cut off Portugal from the rest of Spain, just committing to this one tiny base, the only base the Allies have connections to. Soon, we assume, the Allies assume, Croatia is overrun by anarchists. Their last message was a call for desperate help, as their capital burned in flames. They asked for assistance one last time, but it never arrived. Greece was also invaded by these anarchist areas. chaos was throughout Europe. And especially around New York was a no-go zone. No one passes in, no one passes out. The Middle East he starts breaking off as it seems like some legionnaires have gained specialties in Mesopotamia, Cyprus area, and around Turkish areas. Some states are, however, restored, and so we will get to some border changes as the war is pretty much over. As that happens, what's first on the agenda? Azerbaijan gets released as an independent state, and as well as Armenia. Immediately, Greece is allowed the entire area of Thrace and Constantinople, and even the lower Anatolia. After a while, they soon kind of invade a little bit of the area, and after a while completely consolidate their control over this region. Turkey soon falls completely dark, and in the coming days, and in the coming months and years, the Mediterranean slowly but surely dries back out once more. But none of it was forgotten. The brutal cost of this war and Nazi rule was awful. The places that were once coastal flourishing lands are now dry deserts and barren wastes. The anarchists' areas completely take over France, and France goes dark. Soon, governments are soon set up in Ukraine, and soon in a bunch of other places. Russia is considered Russia is considered one of the most critical losses in this entire war, in this entire years. So the Tomsk government, which managed to actually make it all the way across Siberia to Japan, can return to are allowed to go to Moscow and now rule over the new Russia, the Russian Federation. Turkestan is left independent, as well Asia and Donbass. India, of course, immediately leaves, and China immediately leave the war, and so does Japan and Korea. Other places that feel like they have no affiliation left with anywhere also start leaving, like the Philippines, Brunei, New Zealand, and Australia all leave, as they now need to focus more on governing their internal politics. Though, unfortunately for Africa, a state of anarchy does descend on a lot of the area. Ethiopia is restored to its somewhat self, and people have started sending out exploratory missions to try and, stabilize the region. And Sierra Leone, I think that's what it's called, is fully restored. And Morocco is now capable of leaving the war. In compensation, of course, they get access to their rightful land back and are promised in the future, after all has settled down, complete and total control over Gibraltar. So that was enough for Morocco. Libya's Egypt leaves, but unfortunately Israel and Palestine are in a crisis mode and completely shut down. Especially bordering areas and countries get assaulted. And anarchy, allegiance down here makes their attempt at revolution, causing complete disarray. Benghazi, being Greek, it does get assaulted by Africa just a little bit, but Greece intends on occupying Benghazi and Tripoli when it, is safe to enter the city again, for future African stabilization purposes. But regardless, this entire zone of Libya that is mostly just desert is soon habitable, except for the very coast and bits of Egypt that are still under anarchical rule. The United States feels like its job is still not done, however. Even as in this greater world, old nations leave and no longer have their desire. They still feel a sense of urgency, like as if they need to stay in case something bad happens again. So soon, the United States forms a bond with all the European nations that are still left. And of course, this new organization is called the European Crisis Management, where those nations will continue to monitor the crisis. However, that will be that for today. The United States does retain this part of Russia as a military base. And this part of Canada is still used for French citizens leaving exile. French and British citizens until France and Britain can be returned to, as well as Haiti. So the last dit's effort of the organization and make an effort to try and stabilize the regions around them and manage to set up a somewhat Spanish-led regime. delving into Anatolia was a bit tougher, but thankfully Greece did get all of its land back. However, the struggles against the anarchists prove that Europe cannot easily be liberated, especially as anarchism spreads more into Ukraine. These areas are permanently occupied by the United States and the founding leaders of a new organization called the Atlanto-Mediterranean Alliance, the AMA. The AMA's new alliance goal will be to maintain peace and prosperity around the complete of North Atlantic and Mediterranean, and anywhere else nearby. And for us, that is mainly where our story ends. A completely wasteland Europe. That is even now being ravaged by anarchy. But even Persia and soon what would be known as the Caucasian Crisis can come to be, even as groups of help stabilize themselves. It would definitely prove to be a harsh endeavor. And that is that. And that is where our world will be left off for today and the rest of time. A Europe gone, turned to ash. That's a story for another day. And so, thank you all so much for even just sticking around for World Legend. Well, not even World Legends. I renamed it to the Alternate Future of the World series, Endsieg. And of course, like I said, this was episode 7, the 1,000-Year Reich. Or, I guess it's not so 1,000-year, huh? Regardless, hope you all enjoyed the video. Leave a like and subscribe, and tell everyone that you know about me. It will really help, and I would appreciate it. Anyways, that's where we will be leaving off for. Goodbye.